apostles and prophets for today. Okay, yes, I believe apostles and prophets, as well as the rest of the fivefold ministry, teachers, pastors, evangelists, are all available today in the church. I think they're a bit more rare, perhaps. But then another part of me thinks, well, maybe they're just unfostered, and we don't know how to recognize them as easily because it's become a bit of a weird thing when somebody calls himself an apostle or a prophet. I genuinely think that the title isn't the most important thing, it's the function. If someone believes they're a prophet, the best advice I had was they should just begin to start to function as a prophet. They should start to focus on the function. If you believe you're called as a pastor, just begin to function in that way. If you believe that you're a teacher, you should begin to function in that way. You find it very quickly if you are or whether you're not, because it's not about the title, it's about the function. Now, the function has to be received and endorsed by the body for it to be valid. So you can't just call yourself a teacher. People have to recognize, man, this person's got a teaching gift in their life. You can't just walk around calling yourself an evangelist. It's like, hey, what's the fruit? Okay, who's been saved under your ministry? In the New Testament evangelist, Philip, he had deliverance and healing as a part of that ministry. So just because you're telling people about Christ, it doesn't mean you're an evangelist, right? Where's the healing? Where's the deliverance? That's a biblical pattern of an evangelist. And yes, you might think about someone like Billy Graham, and he preached the word. I think Billy Graham was a unique character in history. God used him uniquely. I don't think that someone like Billy Graham is a pattern that you can look at and say, well, that's how evangelists are in the local church. I think that was God raised him and used him uniquely in his time. So the way that we think about apostles and prophets really needs to be biblical. The idea that they are the foundation of the church. We know that the initial church was founded on the apostles and prophets, but every church that's planted today is planted from an apostolic and prophetic root. Otherwise, there would be no new churches planted today. So the apostle, we've got to remember, is somebody who's on a mission. They have a commission and they're on a mission. It's a governmental mission, but they are there to establish, to take territory, to build something new. We still need that gift today, and it's building the house of God. The apostle is God's master builder. Paul called himself a master builder. God gave Paul the grace to lay the foundation. He said, look, the one who plants, the one who waters, we're nothing. Only God gives the growth. He knew his role. He wasn't there as someone to dominate the church. He really loved the church. He cared about the church. He wanted it to flourish, but he was humble. He knew his role. He knew that it wasn't about him being better than Peter or better than Apollos. He was just there doing what God called him to do. So apostles are people just doing what God called them to do. I don't think you have to be weird about it. They have a role. Apostles being called with a mission, prophets are called with a message. Both the apostle and the prophet have a specific time and a specific people that they are called to function in. Paul was an apostle to the Gentiles. Peter was an apostle to the Jews. And it's the same with the prophets. They have places and destinations and times that they are called to bring the message to the people. John the Baptist was in the wilderness until the day where he appeared to the people of Israel. He had a day assigned for him then to appear and begin that ministry. So apostles and prophets are absolutely fundamentally needed today. I find it interesting that they are the two gifts of Christ which come under the most scrutiny and attack. But I think perhaps it's because the apostle and prophet are most heavenly focused. Their goal is and their desire is to see what's in heaven and bring heaven down. Whereas your pastor, your teacher, your evangelist are focused primarily on people. And so they are people-centered ministries. If you take away the apostolic and the prophetic from a church, it becomes a people club. It becomes a people-focused organization. But if you have the apostolic and prophetic gifts that are functioning, the mandate becomes, let's bring heaven to earth. And that is really the focus of the apostolic and prophetic. So it's not a matter of hierarchy. I think it's a matter of segmentation. First apostles, then prophets, then teachers. God has a divine flow. And the reason that teachers aren't first and the reason that pastors aren't first in terms of when God builds a church is because God has a way in which things need to be laid down. If you've ever built a house, you know that you don't put the roof on before you get the frames up. You don't get the frames up before you put the foundation down. There's a segmentation so that one thing can be built evenly and for longevity upon another. So yes, apostles and prophets are available today and still active in the church today. We need to be better at recognizing them. There's fake apostles, there's fake prophets, but there are true apostles and there's true prophets. There's fake pastors, people who are called, We've got the pastor on the coffee machine today, the guy on the coffee machine, the guy mopping the tiles is called the pastor of the floors. Everybody's called a pastor, but there are real pastors too, and there are real prophets too, and there are real apostles too. So test and throw away the false, but receive the genuine. And I want to encourage you that it's very clear in the early Testament church, in the Didache, for example, in that great kind of document that the early church had access to, which was called the teaching, or recognized as the teaching of the apostles. It had a very clear structure for recognizing apostles and prophets and how they were called to function. How do you know if you've met a real apostle? How do you know if you've met a real prophet? Apparently, here's an interesting thought. If a prophet or an apostle was asking for money, they were a false prophet. So what does that say today about our traveling ministers with honorariums? I don't know. But if you're willing to do it for free, that's a good qualification that maybe you're genuine. That's what I'd say. If somebody's willing to do it for free, if they can. Now, some people can't because you've got to live. There's also like pragmatism. You got to feed your family, you got to live, you got to support the ministry. But if somebody comes to you and says, look, I really want to serve you for free, that's a pretty good indication that they're genuine most of the time.